Go on, Skipper George.
Blackpot, Coco Show, man.
This is the Blackpot, aka Kukushunu, and here we speak truth to power. Remember that our numbers are scrolling on your screens. Come here, come here, come here, come here. Numbers are scrolling on the screens. Do business with us. You make money, we make money. We are seen all over the world. This is the biggest show on TV when it comes to Pan-Africanism. Here we deal with the mindset, changing the African mindset for a better Africa. We are just 1 year old. We have several more years ahead of us. Together, we can build Africa. Yes. Remember to also subscribe to our YouTube page. It's called the Black Empire Media. Click on the notification button so you will not lose any of the stories that we bring up. Next story. The next story we're looking at says what? Watch it. It says slavery, shame to the Church of England. Hey, did the Church of England play a role in slavery? The Church of England. The Church of England. Did it play a role in slavery? But who is this saying? Shame to the Church of England for slavery. Oh, I know this man. Is he not the priest of Canterbury or something like that? His face is very familiar. Why is he saying this? Let's look at the story. Slavery is to the Church of England's eternal shame, permanent shame. Archbishop of Canterbury. Oh yes, I got it right. Archbishop, I said priest of Canterbury. But this is the Archbishop of Canterbury. After Cape Coast Castle visit. That is him in the Cape Coast dungeon. Holding the wall and praying. I'm sure he's peeing on himself. What does the story say? The Archbishop of Canterbury on February 15, 2023 visited a 17th century castle on Ghana's Cape Coast, where enslaved Africans were held before being transported to the Americas on British slave ships. Did you hear that? The Americans were so much involved in slavery. The British, colonialism, they are two different things. Slave trade, one. Transatlantic slave trade, two. Colonialism, neo-colonialism, that's the order. Some of the countries came in later. But watch this. He was joined by the Anglican primates of West Africa and the West Indies, who then joined the Archbishop at a service of the reflection and reconciliation at nearby Christ Church Anglican Cathedral. Originally built by the Swedish in the 1650s, Cape Coast Castle passed into Danish, Dutch, and then English possessions by the 1660s, when it became the headquarters of British colonial administration for Gold Coast, the Gold Coast colony. Over the course of the 18th century, most of Cape Coast Castle trade, Castle's trade was in African captives bound for the Americas where they were enslaved. Throughout the 18th century, the castle served as a grand emporium of the British slave trade. Did you hear that? Throughout the 18th century, that's from 1700 all the way down to 1799. That is what is referred to as the 18th century. British Emporium for slave trade. During the tour of the Archbishop, accompanied by Mrs. Caroline Welby, visited the basement dungeons known as slave holes, where Africans taken from their homes, sometimes hundreds of miles away, were held with little ventilation and no windows before being transported across the Atlantic. The Archbishop paused to pray in silence in a small basement prison cell where up to 200 men were kept. Underneath was then a church. There was a church. Why is the Archbishop of Canterbury cursing the Church of England? The British took over. There was a church instituted by the Church of England praying for slaves before they left. And they also prayed for the slave traders to catch more slaves. There was a queen of Ireland and Great Britain. She was called Queen Anne. She was the queen of slaves. This dirty woman here. She had 17 pregnancies. The dirty woman there. 17 pregnancies. 12 of them all ended up in miscarriages and abortions. 5 of them she gave birth, but none of them ever grew into adulthood because of her wickedness. I can tell you more about this woman. Who was this woman? Watch. Watch. She was born on the 6th of February, the same day Bob Marley was born. But Bob Marley was born in 1945. She was born in what? 1665 in London, England. And she died on the first day of August in 1914 in London. Queen of Great Britain and Ireland from 1702 to 1714. She was the last Stuart monarch. She wished to rule independently, but her intellectual limitations and chronic ill health caused her to rely heavily on her ministers, who directed England's efforts against France and Spain in the War of the Spanish Succession, 1701 to 1714. 13 solid years of war. The bitter rivalries between Whigs and Tories that characterized her reign were intensified by uncertainty over the succession to a throne holder. That's the woman. That's who she is. She was so sick. She was so full of ego. She wanted to rule alone, but she was sick and she couldn't. How did she get into slavery? Watch this. In 1713, an agreement between Spain and Britain granted the British a monopoly on the slave trade with the Spanish colonies. Under the Asiento de Negros, Britain was entitled to supply those colonies with 4,800 African slaves per year for 30 years. Kai, Jesus have mercy. What is this? 4,800 African slaves per year for 30 years. Multiply this number by 30. That is 48,000 by what? 3. The contract for this supply was assigned to the South Sea Company, of which Anne held some 22.5% of the stock. And she had what was known as the Queen Anne Bounty. That was a certain kind of coffers for a lot of money that was put in there from slavery. And they used part of the money to build England. That is why the Archbishop of Canterbury is crying and cursing the Church of England. He said something else. He said that slavery is what? Watch it. The same Archbishop of Canterbury. Slavery was blasphemy. Archbishop of Canterbury humbled after visit to Cape Coast Castle.
Go on, Skipper George.
Blackpot, Coco Show.